Namare. Nganyari nyong na karamero ngai tanangan nyong ko karamini ata. Ngai gana noranga gana tanangan nga noranga pukiana ajaro yata. Nyaro tambri yala ki kaunda nangko ngai chali yong mo na. Man mak yong mo. Man in the puni tanangan nga. Ngai chali ya. Greetings. My name is Jamie. My English name is Jamie. But my proper name is Nyongna. And I am Ghana from the Adelaide Plains area, but also Naranga from the York Peninsula area to the west. So very much saltwater people, my family. I started today with this instrument here, which does not come from this part of the country. Originally comes from up in Adelaide. So in my language, I acknowledge the Yolngu people of Adelaide for sharing their traditional instrument with me and my family. And so during the 1850s onwards, for quite some time, it wasn't allowed for Ghana people to speak our language. So over generations of not speaking the language had died off. It wasn't used as much. And during a period of time when we were reclaiming our language and re-strengthening our language, this was our voice when representing our giving our cultural expression, I guess, within the communities. And this was so shared with us through the Gopal family and Gumash families in North East Arnhem. So we always still use this instrument to pay our respects to them and our connection to them as well, which continues to this day as well. So in the Adelaide Plains area and around South Australia, I guess, for quite a while in the 1830s, 1840s, 50s, we had two German missionaries, Teichelmann and Sherman, that were linguists. So not only did they document our word list, but also our grammar as well, which is why in today we're able to reclaim our language and re-strengthen our language. And I think it's important for all of us to learn the original language from where we live, because when we look at the names in that country that we live in, the language is still written in the country. So in Adelaide we have places like Noarlunga. You heard of Noarlunga? Yeah. And Morley means the bend or the turn, and Nga means it's a place. So you notice all the place names always either have Nga or Illa on the end of them. And the only difference between the place names having Nga or Illa on the end of them is if the word that the place name comes from has one or two syllables, the place name will have Nga on the end of it. But if the word that the place name comes from has more than two syllables, it will have Illa. So just north of here, there's a suburb called Cowandilla. You know that one? And Cowanda means north. So the place that represents the north becomes Cowandilla. Okay? But near Noarlunga there's a place called Onkaparinga. And originally that's pronounced Nyankiparinga. And Nyanki means females. Pari means river. And Nga means it's a place. So just by knowing the language, I know that when I travel through that area, I've got to be respectful, I've got to behave myself, I've got to stick to the beaten track, I've got to be really, respectful to the information that's been handed down from generation to generation with the females for many, many thousands of years. I know from that language that that's a significant side for the females, so I've got to be sensitive to that when I go through there. And that's not just limited to here in Adelaide. When we travel interstate, we go through places like Wollongong, I've heard of places like Echuca, places like Wagga Wagga. You heard of Wagga Wagga? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in the local Aboriginal language there, Wagga Wagga actually means many crows, I'm told. So my father always used to say that we should have named the football stadium here in Adelaide Wagga Wagga. He was always a bit of an Adelaide Crows fan, the poor fella. But like I said, I think just by understanding some of the original language that where we're from, it gives us a stronger understanding of the country that we live in. And I know in the last year there's been a lot of discussions about what welcome to countries are about. And I guess for me, when I give a presentation that is very loosely referred to as a welcome to country, for me it's about making a stronger connection between the people that are in this at this event and the country that we live in, and provide information that isn't provided on Google or in some of the libraries or in the schools even today. So this is information that's been handed down from generation to generation, which gives us a much stronger understanding of the country we live in. And so even for the seasons, I know now that in Australia we use the 4 seasons, but there's actually 6 seasons where we're from here, and each one of those seasons has sub-seasons within them. So there's seasonal indicators that give us a much stronger understanding of the country that we live in as well. In my language, there's no word that directly translates to welcome. So what I did say in my language is mani na pudni. And I said mani na pudni tanaganyanga. So mani na pudni means it's good that you were here. Tanaganyanga, this place where we are at now has been known as Adelaide for about 45 minutes. Only for a very small amount of time. But for much longer period of time, we've known this place as Tandaganyanga. Tanda is the red kangaroo. Ganya is the rocks. And Unga means it's a place. Okay, so it's the dreaming place of the red kangaroo. And if you look at where Victoria Square is, that was always a very significant gathering place for ceremony and the sharing of resources and I guess what is referred to as Bamba Banbalya. Bamba Banbalya is like ceremony for sharing with other language groups that come in through this country as well. So that's the significance of this area as well. But just like there's no word in my language for welcome, there's also no word in my language for goodbye. And I think goodbye is very, very final, it's very abrupt, it's very something that you might say to somebody that you don't like. Goodbye. Yeah, it's a bit brutal. But and I know when I went to high school, whenever we learnt about history, they taught us about history based on a timeline. Every part of history was a part of this line. But we've always known that time isn't a line, it's a circle, and I guess that's why we've never had use for a word like goodbye. So what we say is until we meet again. And in English we use 4 or 5 words to say all of that. In Ghana we have one word that says all of that. So thank you all very much for having me here tonight. And that one word is nakara. Nakara. So thank you all. It's an honour to be here, part of this here, listen to the show here. And like I said, please learn the language, but also be careful where you use that language. I know certain words, our word here for talking is wonga. But there's another Aboriginal language group further up north, and in their language, wonga means to fight. So asking them for a talk up there, come on, let's come and have a talk, they might take their shirt off and say, well, come on then, let's go. So just like, and there are many words that have similarities, but there are also many words that have different meaning in different languages as well. I know with Alyssa's piece over here, there's the sticks. I know one of the references in relation to that style of martial arts is Kali, and I know in the Pindara language in Australia through the APY lands, Kali is a boomerang. Okay, so many languages have similarities with many other languages throughout Australia as well, not just around the world. But there's over 350 different Aboriginal languages, so it's very diverse. But there's also a lot of conflicting words as well. Like I said, like wonga here is to talk, and wonga in other languages is to fight. So please learn the language from where you're from to gain a stronger understanding of the country that we live in. This isn't about Ghana culture. I'm not here to talk about Aboriginal culture. This is the heritage of every Australian, whether you've been here for 100,000 years or 45 minutes. Nakara. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. It's always a privilege to have you and get shivers when you speaking your language. It's amazing. Thank you so much. And so important to have this to start off our conversation about culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks everyone for coming along. Try and keep things like we're a pretty intimate little crowd tonight, so keep it fairly casual. If you do need to stand up and move around, feel free. And there'll be some time for questions at the end. So hold on to those. My name's Adele Sliuzas. I'm the Visual Arts Curator here at the Mill. And this is Alyssa Powell-Ascura, a fabulous artist. So Alyssa was the recipient of the Mill's Delima Residency, presented in cooperation with the Mahmood Martin Foundation. And she has spent, at the end of last year, 3 months at Rimbun Dahan in Malaysia in a residency, and then about 4 months here in our studios at the back, and working on presenting this exhibition that we are in this evening. I'm going to read you a little bio. A self-titled slashie, Alyssa Powell-Ascura is a multi-hyphenated creative. Proud to have grown up on Bunjalung country in a Filipino, Italian, Australian household. Alyssa works across a variety of artistic mediums including writing, conceptual art, immersive installation, traditional and mixed digital media. Her personal belief in the interconnected relationship of humans to nature drives her to pursue advocating better care for ourselves and our earth. Alyssa is motivated to bridge a deeper understanding and connection of Indigenous Philippines and pre-colonial Indigenous Australia. Her creative work has been featured in a variety of local and international publications, and she recently travelled to Sydney as part of Fine Print's Common Words program and is currently undertaking a curatorial mentorship with Vital Statistics for Adhocracy 2024. So that's in September, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. So yeah, I'm just going to ask Alyssa a few little questions and we'll have a bit of a chat and yeah, should be great.
And I just have my cheat code here, so
Yeah.
don't mind me. It's my first artist talk.
So the Mill's a multidisciplinary art space and we really love working with artists who work across different mediums within their practice. You describe yourself as a slashy, which always makes me think of like Hilary Duff. Maybe not showing my age.
Wait, I want to know why now.
Well, because she was like the first slashy, right? She called herself a slashy.
Did a bit of everything.
Lizzie McGuire days. So I wondered if you could explain what being a slashy means to you and talk a little bit about why working in a multidisciplinary way makes sense to you as an artist and then how it relates to the title of your exhibition and the work that you've made.
Unfortunately, I can't be a pop star, but why not? I can't sing. Probably one of the a lot of Filipinos can sing, but unfortunately, I'm the statistic that can't. But yeah, when I was writing a lot of applications, they often have word limits. And then it got to the point where I had to be really succinct when describing my practice. So I thought, I need a word that kind of like encapsulates all of the things that I did, and slashy just made sense. And what I'm learning now as well is that a lot of creative people actually do that, not just me. We all kind of wear many different hats, as you do as well. And yeah, I think partly because my goal is to kind of build this multi-hyphenated creative career as well. Yeah. And it relates to the exhibition. So yeah, halo-halo is actually a traditional Filipino dessert, and it's shaved ice with a bunch of different toppings. So when we were trying to think of creating a cohesive exhibition, it made sense to me because of the many experimental works that we have showing, as well as the variety of different mediums that I have created. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a bit of a mixture of different things that you're bringing all together to make. I guess the wanky art word would be like gestalt or something like that. Like
so it feels,
the sum of the parts are greater than each part altogether.
Yeah, I think also like being very ambitious as well in terms of like, what if this gets shown in a different gallery or a different event or space? I wanted to make sure that each of the works kind of stood strong on their own, but worked really well in the gallery space here. And of course with Adele's mentorship, I think we were able to do that. Yeah.
And then we were so lucky last weekend when we had the workshop that we made Halo
Yeah.
in the space for a bunch of people who came along, which was really nice to have that, making it together as well in the space. Yeah. So I wanted to see if you could chat a little bit about what it was like to travel to Malaysia for 3 months. It must have been like quite an experience for you. And if you can tell us a little bit about what Rimbun Dahan is like and what it was like working in a new cultural context and the connections that you made while you were away.
Yeah, so Rimbun Dahan it's an art centre about 45 to 50 minutes away from KL, and on its own it's actually a botanical garden. And apart from our common room, which is the office and kind of where we all hang out, there's no TV, there's no radio, there's really no internet apart from your hotspot, but even then it's temperamental. So you really got to immerse yourself in nature. And during the time that I was also there, it was the wet season. So during the morning it was beautiful and tropical, and like, you know, you could go out and sunbathe, but then by around like 3 p.m. like it was really stormy. And I think that really in some ways also affected how I perceived how your environment could actually impact your practice. So I think during the first half, because we had a lot of different practitioners as well, and one of them, they created natural dyes. So we'd go and pick from different, because it's an indigenous garden as well, so we'd go pick from different trees and try to dry them. But unfortunately, because it would be raining by the afternoon, like we couldn't really do that. So many experimental and attempts at doing things that didn't really work out. But at the same time, really encouraged me to not focus on the outcome so much, but the process itself, which was really amazing. And what was great as well is that Rimbun Dahan actually has their own residency program as well, where they prioritize Southeast Asian practitioners, and not just visual artists, but also choreographers, writers, dancers, researchers. And during the time that I was there, what was really great is that I did get a chance to work with a variety of different people. And so one of my neighbors, they were a local Malaysian artist that works with sculpture and really ephemeral kind of works using just a bunch of things that you find in the garden. And then I also got a chance to work with 2 Filipino artists, so they're actually a family from the Philippines, through the Southeast Asian program, who were both really fantastic artists with 2 varied disciplines. So one was Paulo Icasas, who does massive, like really expansive, I'm going to use your word, abstract art, and Marian Contreras, who does very soft, delicate, soft sculptures, which I think you'd really like. And yeah, so kind of seeing all these artists who've been doing this for such a long time and be really disciplined in the way that they created kind of made me really inspired to be the same. So I think if I was to choose a word to describe my time there, and I feel like this word is overused, but it's just so good, but it was transformative. Yeah, because not only was it my first residency, it was also my first international residency, and also the first time I actually had studio space away from my house. And yeah, it was such a privilege to be able to have the space, the time, as well as the interaction with the peers that I had during that time, who I get to call friends now, which is lovely. Yeah.
I know that you made some really nice connections with people, and you did a little bit of travel from Rimbun Dahan together as well. And was there a bunch of dancers?
Yes.
Yeah, which is...
Yeah. So I think after the first month, I just got a bit kind of cooped up. Because as I said, it's not, it's really kind of like living in a rainforest. So you do need to go out to this city if you want to kind of experience what it's like seeing people. So it was really great. So we would go out, and what was great as well is then I got to then see what the arts ecology was like in Southeast Asia. So Bilkis, which is the manager and the daughter of Hijaz Kasturi and Angela Hijaz. Yeah, she's a fantastic dancer, choreographer, critic, and whenever there's kind of events, she would take all of us. And yeah, I got to understand what it was like for the creatives in Southeast Asia as well, which was really awesome. And I think what I really loved was there was this very community focus and collective mindset, which I think in some ways we tend to lack in Australia, because like we're all set in our little cities, our little states. So it was really great to see them wanting to make sure that the Southeast Asia arts ecology is strong and intact through those cross-discipline and interaction. Yeah. And I think also, I'll just say, that's why the Delima Residency is so good, because like I can't think of any other programs in Australia apart from Asia Link, which already ended, that actually would send an Australian artist on a sponsored residency to spend time and have this actual intercultural connection with the country. So yeah, it was really enriching.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that maybe you haven't touched on is that, as well as you getting to have this experience at Rimbun Dahan, you also were an ambassador for South Australian artists in Malaysia, representing what we do so well here. So yeah, thank you for that.
I hope I did okay.
Yeah, definitely. All right, my next question. So in your artist statement, you write, through the lens of food, family and culture, the audience is welcomed to a seat at the table, weaving together threads of tradition, memory and contemporary discourse into a rich tapestry of multi-sensory experiences. So I wondered if you could have a bit of a chat with us about why food has been such an important touch point for you with sharing, and we can talk about the work in the foyer, Kanteo, and also a little bit about the workshop as well, if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah. So my grandmother, Pasita, she was a community elder, she was a cook, she owned her own karinderya / sari store hybrid, and she kind of ran it underneath our ancestral home back in the Philippines, and actually spent the first 8 years of my life with her. So I think she's just had such a huge influence and impact on me and my values that I wanted to dedicate that aspect of her love and advocacy for community through food. She also comes from a really agriculturally rich area. So in the Philippines, the Cordillera, it's essentially like the mountain region up in the north, Luzon. And yeah, a lot of the people there are peasant farmers, and that's where she comes from. And she's also an indigenous woman of Igorot descent. And yeah, she kind of always just advocated for farmers and ensured that we understood, just because she puts the food on the table doesn't mean the hard work was just from her. It was also from the people who would actually put the rice on the ground, and I don't actually know how long it takes, but I'm sure it takes a long time for it to seed. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to do. And food is so, it's such a great gateway to other cultures, and I wanted to dedicate the Kain Tayo as well towards the Filipino migrant community, because the Filipino migrant community is the 5th largest migrant community in Australia, but the food is significantly underrepresented, and there's so many varying factors as to why that might be. But I think also because there's a huge stereotype on what Filipino food is, and yeah, it's just not introduced in a nice way. Let's say whenever you look at Filipino food, it's usually balut. Has anyone tried balut or know what balut is? So it's basically a duck egg that's unfertilized. So everyone kind of goes ill. But it's a traditional food that people have eaten for many eons. So I think it's really important to be respectful of that. And with Kain Tayo as well, what I really loved was the people that participated got a chance to be, in some ways, a performer, because they did kamayan, so they ate with their hands, and it blurs the line between them being a part of the work through that way.
So Alyssa's work that's in the foyer is the video work of Alyssa doing the kamayan. But at the workshop on the weekend, we had 11 people come along and served this beautiful Filipino food from Chris at Adobo Co, who's down the port, and everyone had the opportunity to under Alyssa's tutelage, have a go at using their hands, and I even gave it a go. Putting people a little bit out of their comfort zone, but also in their comfort zone because everyone loves to eat great food. So learning some things, learning about your cultural connection to food. Will be fantastic.
Yeah. And I will say though, even though in some ways it is underrepresented, what's been really awesome is that there are trailblazers even from Australia in the realm of food. So Sarai, which is from Melbourne, I think like they got the top Good Food Awards, which is like one of the highest culinary awards in Australia. And as well as Entrepreneurs, so a book that I was lucky enough to be a part of, the Calamansi story. So they did this 3-part project, including the book, and then there's also Calamansi beverage, and they did a documentary on the Calamansi and telling Filipino Australian migrant story through it. And they got nominated for James Beard Award, which is like one of the highest awards in the culinary scene. So
Fantastic. It's really great. So another thing that we like to talk about when we do these artist talks is having artists share a bit of their process. And your work is so diverse, it's hard to like put, this is my process onto anything. But I thought maybe we could pick a few works and chat through them. And we've already talked a little bit about the Kenteo video, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about the process of making that. And then I thought another one that might be good is this one here, which is called Ale para sa Duende.
Yeah.
An offering for the dwarves. Because I know that's got a bit of a backstory. So.
Maybe I'll do this first. Yes. So this install is kind of a very satirical take on something that occurred to me whilst I was visiting my mom's family, which is like a semi-rural area in Luzon, in Cavite. So it was my first week back in the Philippines, so of course I was eating a lot of different kinds of food. And my cousins and I, we went on a walk, and because it's a semi-rural area, there's actually a lot of open spaces, and people typically would just like plant random fruit trees and vegetables for others to just go and take. And I found a moringa tree. So moringa is also known as the tree of life because of its many uses. And the leaves itself is one of my favorite things. And I took some against my cousin's wishes, and I took it home to make soup with. And then a few days later, I was like up at 2 a.m. vomiting and visiting the bathroom way too many times. And I thought it was just gastro, but my uncle believed it was a duende, which is like a dwarf-like creature in Filipino mythology. So he took me like the next day, even though I was like, I'm just gonna go to the chemist, I'll get a loperamide. It's like, no, it's a duende. So yeah, he took me to an albulario, which is a traditional healing doctor. And their house was similar to my grandmother's house, where it's like their ancestral home, and then like they have the eatery underneath. So their house is like it's their home. It's also a lugawan, which is a porridge. So they sold porridge, but it was also a sari store. And when we came in, like immediately, like you could tell, it was kind of it was an albulario's house, because there's like this strong smell of jasmine and ilang-ilang. And so I created an essential oil that has aspects of that to kind of like emulate her house. And then when like she had a little look at me, was asking me questions, she started pulling this cotton strings, and then she was bounding it as she was talking to me and asking me questions about like, where have I been, what have I eaten, da 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 da. And she used it to speak to this duende, and each time like she would bound and wrap wrap it around herself, and then after the question she'll like show it. So if it was like a continuous circle, it meant yes. If it wasn't, it meant no. Something like that. I couldn't understand it, but she was the one that's kind of interpreting it for us. So I included that in there. And the tiny little books, it's New Testament Bible. So I was reading, when I was researching at Rimbun Dahan, I was reading about religion because it was my first time in a Muslim country, and my understanding of in Southeast Asia in some ways was really focused on the Philippines and the northern parts where it's a lot of Catholics. And there was a great writing that I read, and they were explaining how in some ways the Catholicism in the Philippines is like animistic but in disguise of Catholicism. So that's why I kind of bounded it in the cloth to kind of show that even though the Spanish forcefully converted majority of Filipinos to become Catholics, there's still animistic and pre-colonial ways of being that really pervades in modern contemporary life, and this is one of them, you know, being forcefully taken to Albalado by your uncle. Yeah, so that's what that work is about. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And it was gastro. Because like she didn't help, unfortunately. She did tell me to do like an offering and to drink like a can of soft drinks. Both could be bought from her house. But like it was, I was still visiting the bathroom that night, so I ended up going to the doctors and they said to take loperamide. So yeah.
Yeah, great. I think hearing that story with that work, gives you so much insight into the story that's going on, and there is a little bit about that on the floor sheet. Yeah, as well. If anyone wants to grab one of those to take home. I feel like you've already talked about the food aspect of the video work, but one thing that like Chloe and me keep on talking about is sometimes we sit on our couch to have our lunch. And sitting there with you eating and you're eating, and sitting here with you now, you're so smiley and like generous and gregarious, but in that film you're very serious. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about maybe the persona that you have put on for that video.
Yeah, you know what's so funny as well is that like I didn't know I was doing it until like we were watching the playback, and I think when I was creating this work, like I actually did a bunch of tests with a bunch of different kinds of food before I settled on this one. And I guess like in some ways I was performing, but it kind of blurs this line between performance and documenting, because if I was to eat Kamayan, I probably would be doing it like that anyway. But yeah, I was very aware of the camera, and that's probably why there's like an added element to how I was showing up as. And when we were installing as well, like it wasn't like intentional thing that we were trying to do, but I think the distance between where the audience might sit and where the actual monitor is kind of, it's as if I'm looking down on you, just very slightly. And I think there's a little bit of that power play as well.
And you're slightly larger than life on the screen as well. Yeah, there's definitely a power dynamic going on there.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, fantastic. Maybe let's choose one more. Would you like to talk about the Sari Sari store?
Yeah. So Sari Sari store are essentially convenient / general stores in the Philippines, but also all over the world. When I was in Rimbun Dahan, they were called warongs, and there's one that we frequented like pretty much every single day. I was actually just talking to Lou about this, is that before I went to Malaysia, like I brought like a box of Wheat Bix just in case. And like at the end of the residency, I barely touched it because we would go across the road at the warung, and they had such great nasi lemak, and that's what the locals would eat, and we just were like, okay, we'll just go in there. And that was kind of our daily routine. So yeah, I wanted to pay respect to my grandmother's sari store, as well as the many convenience stores, warungs all over the world, where they're usually kind of family owned, and they're kind of the backbone of grassroots microeconomics. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you've it's quite evocative, the way that you put it together. When we were installing, like, oh, what height should the shelf be? And we got Alyssa to stand up close and like just lean on it, and that's the height that we made it, so that it felt like it was the right height for a person.
Yeah.
An Alyssa-sized person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also adding the audio work that goes with it really makes it extra immersive. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, great. Well, I might open it up to questions then. Does anyone have anything they want to ask?
Hello.
Hello.
So the Sari store, one part of it that I'm fascinated with is the chalk white creature. Is that a creature?
This one?
Yes.
It's not a creature. It's actually, although it could be, open for interpretation. No, but it's like, the funny thing about sari stores is that it's almost always unmanned. Like, there's always someone that is meant to be manning it, but they'll be on their phone or like off somewhere else or talking and having a chat. So what's really ubiquitous in like the warung, the sari stores and bodegas like in Latin America is that they always have this plastic white chair. So, so I wanted to include it.
Wow, because I actually was thinking that you were making a statement about colonization, and it was this alien creature.
Oh,
Oh yeah, I can see the alien now.
yeah, that was part of it too.
I've always found, particularly in Filipino cuisine, the use and the familiarity with multinational packaged foods, and I thought you were actually providing a discourse on colonization through Filipino food and its dissemination.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't intentional, but like, I'm glad you said that now. I'm gonna take that. The funny thing is that most of the items are actually, it's like, barely any of them is actually like Filipino owned. Like Milo is Australian.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's a very interesting point.
Yeah. Especially the whole ubiquitous spam thing.
Yes.
Which is then when you put the whole Second World War and American imperialism, it's fascinating.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, I love that take.
There'll be little white aliens popping up.
Yeah. In our future. Yeah.
Quinn.
Yeah, I was clearly very talented across very many different mediums and ways. When you first have an idea, I was wondering if there's any sort of process that you go through to determine what sort of form that idea takes, and whether it's audio visual, whether you use chalk and little alien creatures.
That's a really good question, and I think I incubate ideas and do a lot of research before actually doing. Like when Adele and I would do our little catch-ups, like I'm just yapping like for a good portion of the time, because like I feel like for me it is like 90% just like creative research and conceptualizing, incubating the idea, and then 5% actually making it, failing, experimenting, like that doesn't really work with it, and 5% is the final outcome. But yeah, I think what I end up doing is that if this particular concept or particular topic works best with a particular medium, then that's what I do. Like with the Kain Tayo and even the other video work, like easily very heavy kind of topics and could be written, could have like a 3,000 word essay written on it, but that might not be the best way to present that idea. Not that like, you know, there's anything wrong with wanting to read a 3,000 word essay, but I just think video work and performance was the best way to capture that in a very accessible and immersive way. So that's why I chose those mediums. But yeah, I don't think I have any particular process apart from thinking a lot of overthinking, really.
I think as well, like the works where you have put your body in there, having your body in the space doing the performance that's captured on the video is so important. And then there's other works like the Balik Bayan, what it is? Yeah, boxes, where it's actually not about the body, it's about this object that moves between places, and you know, it's obviously something that's important in your family, but I think it's something that also crosses cultures, that when part of your family moves to another place, that you put together care packages for them and you send that off. And sometimes it's like silly stuff. Like I know my friend was living in Germany and her mum used to send her Mars bars, and she's like, oh, we can get those here. And you just spent so much money on postage. But it's the care, and so this work makes more sense to be the object that's moving between places. And that you've been able to bring in, you know, some of the same processes that you've used in this work into this work as well. Special. Yeah.
And I think also what materials I have on hand, like this Balik Bayan box, it's actually the same boxes that I used when I moved interstate from Northern Rivers to here. So it has that added extra element of what I have on hand, and how can I be resourceful to make sure it gets another life.
How did you end up in Adelaide? Like how by Adelaide?
Via plane. No.
Not all the time.
I'm just kidding. I well, I really wanted to move to like a major city, and I feel like I've kind of had enough of Brisbane in some ways, just because I kind of knew everyone. But also I feel like Adelaide has such a unique identity that I kind of felt like I could impart or like shape parts of it. And we have such great artists from Adelaide actually, or South Australia in general, and it's such a shame they end up moving elsewhere. So I just hope more people stay. But also my partner lives here, so
Fantastic.
What do you see as the unique character
of Adelaide? I think it's like a big small town. And that comes with a lot of perks, I think. And in some ways, some people might feel like, you know, like a big fish in a small pond. But I think what's really good is then you're able to cultivate communities within the space, which I hope to impart.
My husband used to say it's a big village with all conveniences.
Yes.
City.
Exactly.
Did anyone over here have a question at all? Otherwise, I think we might wrap it up. So thank you so much, Alyssa.
Thank you.